Blizzard Entertainment just announced that they will no longer be publishing their games in China. That means Overwatch, Diablo, World of Warcraft, StarCraft, Hearthstone, no longer available in China from the 23rd of 2023. Now, there are a lot of layers to the story that no one in the media are talking about, no content creators are talking about, because of one company. They're called NetEase. And NetEase, I believe, is the second biggest gaming company in China, and they've been in partnership with Blizzard since 2008. The idea that Blizzard Entertainment can no longer publish a video game in China because of a disagreement with one company's publishing is absurd. Absolutely absurd. There are no other publishers available. There's nothing else going on behind the scenes here. Let me walk you through the story. And Blizzard Entertainment and NetEase are suspending services in China. Now, let's go through the blue post so you get a better understanding. So, Irvine, California, that's the main Blizzard headquarters, announced today that it will be suspending most Blizzard game services in mainland China due to the expiration of the current licensing agreements with NetEase. So my understanding is NetEase is the publisher in China for Blizzard Entertainment. That's who NetEase is. They're like the second biggest gaming company in China. They're enormous. So the games that will be affected, that will no longer be available in China, can't play it anymore, as of January the 23rd, 2003. So very early next year. This includes World of Warcraft, Hearthstone, Warcraft 3 Reforged, Overwatch, the StarCraft series, Diablo 3, and Heroes of the Storm. Diablo 4 is not included on that list. Game isn't technically published by NetEase because it hasn't been released yet. But they do go on to say Diablo Immortal, the mobile game, co-development and publishing is covered under a separate agreement between the two companies. So Diablo Immortal was developed in China with apparently a lot of feedback from Blizzard Entertainment. And they've, as they stated here, they've got a secondary agreement. So Diablo Immortal will still be available in China. Covering the publication of these Blizzard titles in China. Yep. The two parties have not reached a deal to renew the agreements that is consistent with Blizzard's operating principles and commitment to players and employees. So they're saying it's a principle issue. It's a moral issue, right? We will suspend new sales in the coming days, and Chinese players will be receiving details on how this will work soon. Okay. Upcoming releases for World of Warcraft Dragonflight, Hearthstone, March of the Lich King, and Season 2 of Overwatch 2 will proceed later this year. Okay, so they're making sure to let all the Chinese players know that this year, all this new content will be available. But look, if you're going to buy a World of Warcraft subscription in January, it's not going to be valid anymore. So Blizzard games have a lot more value than a lot of other video games in the industry. For example, I grew up playing Diablo. That's my thing. Maybe it was World of Warcraft for you. Maybe it was Hearthstone, maybe StarCraft, whatever. At the end of the day, they get the bad end of the stick here because they can't play these games that they absolutely love and grew up with. We are immensely grateful for the passion our Chinese community has shown throughout the nearly 20 years we've been bringing our games to China through NetEase and other partners. Their enthusiasm and creativity inspire us, and we are looking for alternatives to bring our games back to the players in the future. So this is how we handle this. We have to take their word for their word. So they've simply stated that it's a morale issue, right? They don't agree with principles. We do not know what those principles are, but apparently Blizzard doesn't like what they're doing with the new contract, with the renewal. So it doesn't necessarily mean that Blizzard Entertainment are completely pulling out of China altogether. Yeah, that's right. Activision Blizzard's third quarter 2022 financial results. So they were saying that out of all of Activision Blizzard's consolidated net revenue last year, only 3% came from NetEase's publishing in China. This is extremely difficult to understand because China is a very large market, but it's also a Western game. You know, like China has their own video games and their own stuff like that. 3% is a really difficult number to get my head around. And maybe it's just cleverly worded, like Activision Blizzard's consolidated net revenue. But like I said earlier, you can't jump to conclusions with this stuff because there are no external sources of information. So we can't say there's no way you only made 3% from the Chinese market for World of Warcraft, Overwatch, Diablo, StarCraft. 3%? Really? Really? Only 3%? But there's no other contrary evidence. So you have to take their word for it, you know? So anyway, they go on to say, we are in discussions regarding the renewal of the agreements, but a mutually satisfactory deal may not be reached. We continue to see substantial long-term growth opportunities for our business in the country. So they're not pulling out completely. They do see the market. The co-development and publishing of Diablo Immortal is covered by a separate long-term agreement. So you don't have to be a mathematician to realize that if 3% of their revenue came from the Chinese market, with the amount of people that are in the country compared to the US, to Australia, to everywhere around the world, it's a pretty bad deal, guys. It's a bad deal. The numbers are right there. I don't know if it's clever wording or not, but there's something not quite right here. Either way, there are other companies that might be interested. So if Activision Blizzard are making 3% revenue, who knows what deal that they have with NetEase? Who knows what deal that they have? One could assume that the deal is probably not that great. Probably not that great if it only met 3% of their profits. Activision Blizzard. So that doesn't cover Call of Duty and all that stuff as well. They've talked about the same thing. I won't go into their article because it's the same thing we just spoke of. But I want to show you guys something that should pique your interest. Okay. So NetEase is the second biggest gaming company in China, I believe. The biggest company is Tencent. And Tencent is it's a tech conglomerate. So it's not just in video games. They own real estate. They own actual tech, not just games, like things like Discord. They own a lot of shares in pretty much everything. They're enormous. But here's what I want to show you guys. So remember, Tencent isn't NetEase. They're two different things. Here's the ownership of Tencent. Pay attention to this too. Riot Games. According to this article, PC Gamer, 100%. Right. So the publishing partner in China to do its majority stakeholder after paying $400 million for 93% stake in the game. If you own 51% of a company, you get to call the shots. Epic Games. 40%. Okay. 40%. That's Unreal Engine. So all your favorite games, whether they're coming out from the West, whether they're coming from Poland, Australia, wherever, they tend to use Unreal Engine. And Tencent owns 40%. Bluehole, which is PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds, don't underestimate how big this game is now. It's kind of fallen off a bit. It's not very popular, but it is pretty big. So they only own 11.5%. Here's where it gets interesting. Ubisoft, 5%. That's all they own. 5% in Ubisoft. Activision Blizzard, 5%. Grinding Gear Games, Path of Exile, 80% owned by Tencent, Chinese company. And then some other investments worth noting. Nothing really stands out here. I mean, Platinum Games, I think they're about to go insolvent anyway, aren't they? And everything else is all just pretty chill. Oh, and Discord as well. Yeah, they have it owns around a 20% stake in Discord as well. So the point is, basically, if NetEase has an exclusive publishing rights to all of Activision Blizzard's games, and they're only making 3% of their revenue by going through NetEase, then you probably want to pull out. You probably don't want to be dealing with these kind of margins. It's not worth it. Well, it is worth it. 3% still a lot, but you could probably get a better deal. And if you can flip the narrative where it's like a PR move, which this is allegedly, the two parties have not reached a deal that is consistent with Blizzard's operating principles. Blizzard has a very huge history with China. They've had a couple of controversies around it, but they've managed to kind of flip it in a PR way that works for them, which, good for them. So, yeah, we'll see what happens with Tencent and if they can find another publisher, because those margins are way too low. Yeah!